Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
Hello everybody, Pat Flynn here, and welcome back to Sunday School. Today, we are going to talk about why you should go to church. And no, this is not your grandmother speaking, this is your normal, regular host, but I think we can have a fun and productive conversation about the benefits of going to church. Yes, like an actual church. Here's the church. Here's the steeple. Open it up. See all the the little whatever that is. Anyway, yeah. Let's talk about why you should go to church. Maybe even how to go to church. And I know this. Some of you probably already. A lot of you, I'm sure, already do go to church. So I might be preaching to the choir here. No pun intended. But hey, even if so, the choir needs to be preached to. And I think that there are really good reasons to do this, and I'll share some of my experience of how so many things in my life have changed, not just since I began to live a life of religious seeking and commitment, but specifically got myself involved in a religious community, specifically Mass for me, but started to go to church on a consistent, regular, and frequent basis. I look back at my life, and I can identify certain periods where there was dramatic transformation, where I can say, you know what, at that time in my life, that's a time where everything changed. And one of those periods is when I first started getting into fitness and martial arts and really started taking my health seriously. And I can look at that and say, yeah, that was a pivotal moment in my life. Same thing with when I made the commitment to start attending church and being serious about because for those of you who are relatively new listeners to Sunday School, and I know hate to repeat old stories, but there's new people popping in all the time, which is wonderful. I was not a religious person for a very long time. I was a sort of hardened, foul-mouthed skeptic. But a life of seeking through philosophy, a study of history, science, all of that brought me firmly into the bosom of the Catholic Church, of all places. Yep, that's where I wound up. But even after I had sort of made that intellectual ascent, there still had to be that we talk about being reasonable and then responsible. Okay, we reason out what we think is true. But then the next step is we then need to be responsible and live in accordance with what we think is reasonable. Now, a number of people can reason out different truths, but they might not integrate them responsibly into their lives. And I mean, look at fitness, look at nutrition, right? A lot of people can reason out what they should be doing, what healthy eating is, why they should be exercising, but then they don't live responsibly in accordance with what reason tells them. Well, same thing with the spiritual and religious life. Like, we can reason out all these different religious truths, the existence of God, Christ as his only son, etc., and then we can just somehow kind of put that on the back burner. We might take it out when it's convenient or when a holiday comes along. But that is not living responsibly, right? If we arrive at a position through the power and light of reason, and we see that this is not only true but important, we need to realign our lives responsibly according to that. So that's just a little side note. First live reasonably, but then live responsibly according to it. So I had to do that. I had made this sort of intellectual ascent, but then I knew, okay, I think this is true. So now I need to realign my life to reflect what I believe is true. Now, how do I do that? And of course, I had no idea at all how I would do this. I was very sort of timid and shy and nervous. Like, how does one go to church? I know so many people probably don't have that issue because you were kind of maybe brought up in a more religious family or what have you. But that's part of this. This episode, not only why you should go to church, but also like how. Like, where do you start? What does that process look like? Well, I've been there. I can help you out with that. But let's start with the why. Why should you go to church? Well, I'll be perfectly frank. The first reason is because it's true. That's it, and that's the most fundamental reason. If it wasn't true, then I'd probably say maybe don't waste your time. Except for that, there's a lot of other benefits aside. But fundamentally, is because it's true. And we can make arguments, and we can give evidence for why it's true. And that's pretty much what all of Sunday School is largely about. So I have so many episodes now at this point. Go listen to my conversations with Stephen Barr, Robert Spitzer, Ed Fazer, Michael Rhoda, Tim McGrew, where we're talking about all the cumulative, the existence of God and the truth of Christianity. And then, once you weigh that evidence, and if you're like me and you come to the conclusion that you do think that this is true, or even more plausibly true than not, that's what the interesting thing about the conversation with Michael Rhoda is there's a point where, even if you're still somewhat unsure, the rational thing to do, at least when you weigh the cost-benefit analysis, is to make a firm commitment of seeking. So I'll link that episode. Michael Rhoda is great. He did. He's got his PhD in philosophy, and but has done a lot of work on sort of updating Pascal's wager. So you don't even have to have 100% conviction. Now, I think you can know quite definitively certain truths, the existence of God, and to a very high probability and plausibility, many other things that affirm the basic fundamental truths of Christianity. I think you can do that, but you don't have. You don't have to go to the end of the rainbow, so to speak, to make that commitment. You can get to a certain point where you think, okay, this seems like it might maybe be true, but maybe I'm still kind of on the fence. And then you can make your commitment there. You can your commitment of religious seeking. You don't have to fake belief. You don't have to pretend to think that you believe more than you actually do. You just make a sincere commitment of seeking, and that's it. So it's very authentic, and I think that's a one. And again, that's what Dr. Michael Rhoda talks about in that episode. And I think, well, what a wonderful thing to do, right? It kind of lowers the barrier to entry. But I would press it a little bit further. I would say you should do it because it's true. I became Catholic because I believe that it is true. I believe that God exists. I believe that he incarnated, that he came into the world, literally was hung on a piece of wood, died, was brought back to life by the act of a super miracle, as indeed a divine endorsement on the person of Jesus Christ, what he said and taught, and that he founded a church. And I will go so far as to say that he founded a very specific church at that. Now, those are all things that you need to investigate and weigh out on your own. I try to provide as much ground for that, as much reason, as much argument, and as much evidence as I can throughout all of my Sunday school episodes. So I'm not going to spend time on that there because we have an enormous catalog past. We have an enormous amount coming forward. But that's something that you need to sort of search out and examine for yourself. God wills what is befitting for us as humans. And we are, as humans, rational animals. That's what we are. So God wills that we use our reason to help find him, to help understand him, to help know him, and to help love him. That's what we're supposed to do. That's what we're supposed to do. That's why I'm so frequently pestered by how reason, how relativistic our society and culture has become, because that's not what we are. We can know truth. We can use the power of reason to gain clarity and light in our lives, and that's what we're supposed to do, and we should do it specifically for religious matters, and seeking God. And God wills that because it is good for us. As rational creatures, we are meant to use our reason to discern what is really good for us, that ultimate good, that highest good, of course, being God and having a relationship with him. That is the end of that is the end of man. That is what we are made for, perfect, complete happiness in relationship with God. Can't have it all in this life, but we can have it all in the next life, so long as we make good use of this life. That's what this life is for. It is a transitory period. So, first reason, because it's true. Second, for you, because it's absolutely, and I'm not going to say that just because something is true, it's automatically going to be good for you, but there does seem to always be some type of correspondence there, doesn't there? And the amount of research we now have on how religion and spirituality affect a person's health and well-being is really quite overwhelming. People who live a spiritual and religious life are healthier and happier, by pretty much every metric. So I'm going to pull up a study here. We have the study is called Religion, Spirituality, and Health, the Research and Clinical Applications. and I'll link this in the show notes for people who are curious, but it's based on a systematic review of original database quantitative research published in peer-reviewed journals between 1872 and 2010, right? So it's quite significant. And the reviewing the research of religion. Oh, sorry, there goes my train. I think I told all of you that my house very fortunately came with a train. How about that? You buy a new house, you get a train 40 feet from your back window. So it's just stopping by, saying hello. Okay, I think he's on his way. He's really hamming that horn up this morning, in case anybody isn't already awake. So this research review is looking at the effects of living a spiritual and religious life on mental health, physical health, relationships, well-being, happiness, hope, optimism, gratefulness, but also negative outcomes such as depression, suicide, anxiety, psychosis, substance abuse, delinquency, crime, marital instability, and personality traits. And the short of it is, I won't go into all of it, but the short of it is that everything good that I just listed improves when you live a spiritual and religious life, and everything bad that I just listed significantly decreases when you live a spiritual and religious life. So people who have more religion and spirituality in their lives experience less depression, less anxiety, less psychosis, far less delinquency and crime, far less marital instability. They experience far more happiness, reports of subjective well-being, hope, optimism, gratefulness, and physical and mental health as well. Their pain goes down. Their overall mortality is improved. Cancer goes down, immune function goes up, dementia goes down, Alzheimer's goes down, endocrine function improves, hypertension goes down. It is incredible. I mean, it's across the board. So I'll just scroll down. This is a very, very long thing to read through, but I would encourage anybody does it. I'll link it in the show notes. But let me just scroll all the way down and just give you a snippet from the conclusion, even though I sort of summed it up already. Scrolling and... It's just, this is where I say, like, even if it wasn't true, it's so good for you, it's hard to ignore it. But hey, even better, right? Even better if it is true and it's really good for you, then you really have no excuse to at least seek this out and to at least give this a shot, to try and live a life. Again, you don't have to fake belief in anything, and I can't emphasize that enough, because that's not something that I could have done. I had to chase these questions to the end of the rainbow. I had to satisfy myself intellectually. But you can make a sincere commitment of open-minded religious seeking. So here's the conclusion. I'll just read part of it because it's also pretty long, but religious spiritual beliefs and practices are commonly used by both medical and psychiatric patients to cope with illness and other stressful life changes. A large volume of research shows that people who are more spiritual religious have better mental health and adapt more quickly to health problems compared to those who are less spiritual and religious. And it goes through and then lists kind of all those different metrics I was talking about before. So, number one, because it's true, and number two, because it's good for you. And what other more reasons do you need than to go to church and get involved in your community? Now, of course, people were going to ask, well, what type of church should I go to? And obviously, I have an opinion on that. I mean, I am Catholic after all, but that's something that you need to, search out and seek and answer for yourself. And certainly, I would invite you to indulge and use all the resources that I've provided on this show to help you make that decision. I will simply turn here now to sort of my experiences of coming into the Catholic Church and what that did for me and what it continues to do for me at this point. 5 years ago, certainly even just 3 years ago, if you would have ever said that I would have been a regular churchgoer, I would have laughed so hard that I wouldn't have need to have trained my abs for a week. So this is all still somewhat new and fresh to me, but I've been in it long enough now, and I've seen the fruit of it now that I'm excited to kind of to share with you. First off is last Lent I made the commitment to go to daily mass, and daily mass was not at the most convenient time. It was where I used to live. It was 9 a.m. And so I would have to shut my laptop, and which was difficult for me because 9 a.m. is like peak productivity time. I've got my coffee in me. I'm kind of in the groove. This is where I get a good amount of my writing done, my work done. So there was an immediate conflict there where I had to make a choice. I had to say, okay, what is most important? Is it that I get my writing done for the day, my creative work, my business work, or that I go and live my life of religious commitment. And of course, I am in a very fortunate position where I run my own business. I can do that. I get not everybody could do that, but certainly in the Catholic Church, you have earlier morning options as well. So hint, hint, wink, wink. But this was one of those pivotal moments where everything changed for me. And for so many reasons. One is just the ability to detach from my work, which is so hard for me to do, and go and pray and meditate and participate in the Mass. It was and still is the most beautiful and sacred part of my day. It's so incredibly transformative. It really has healed me inside and out, spiritually, mentally, and I believe physically too. I do believe that. Beyond that, and of course we go with the whole family at least once a week. We often bring the family more than that. Sometimes we bring all the kids to daily Mass, I would say between 2 to 3 times a week. Sometimes we'll get on a real kick and we'll be there every day. And they do a good job for how young they are. So if you have kids and that's one of your block-ups, my advice is, first off, people in church love that kids are there. So every time we bring our kids, we just get flooded by all the people in either daily Mass or Sunday Mass saying, "Oh, it's so great that you bring your kids here. We love having kids." And one of my favorite sayings is, "Hey, if the church isn't crying, it's dying." So everybody, don't feel shy or embarrassed about bringing your kids like we did. We felt totally weird about it because, they're going to be running around, they're going to be screaming. And you know what? Sometimes that's exactly what happens. But nobody has ever been bothered by this. Every priest we've talked to, every person in the church has just said, keep bringing your kids. It's so important. It's so wonderful to have them, and we've just felt nothing but love and welcome for our entire family there. And that's such a cool thing in and of itself. So I will say, I understand it's a hesitancy for people. I understand it's an inconvenience, but the good things in life typically are inconvenient. Let's be frank. It's not convenient to eat healthy. It's not convenient to go to the gym, but we do these things because we know they're true and we know that they are good for us. And I would just make the same thing about going to church. It's not just about attending Mass for me. It's getting so involved in the church and trying to give back, trying to make a difference because of the difference it's made in my life. So we just recently moved, and I'm still getting integrated in the parishes and their various ministries here. But before, at the previous church we were at, I started teaching Sunday school, which is something I would never do, except for on the podcast, of course, but to fourth graders. And what a wonderful, incredible experience that was. I also gave regular talks at a group called Catholic Young Adults, a group which was a large group of people in their mid-20s to mid-30s, and we would give talks on philosophy, theology, history. So I was invited to speak there a number of times, and I got to know that group really well. And the community and the friendship, this is so important. When you find the community and friendship of people who share the same values of you, I have never had friendships and community like I have now, and I've had really good friendships and community through my life. Don't get me wrong, but it's what Aristotle would call a virtuous friendship, when people are kind of all living that same life of religious seeking, and they're willing the good of the other person. There's nothing quite like it. I'm now out here. My parish has a Wednesday morning men's spirituality group, and it's like one of the most important things in my life now. I mean, it is quickly, in the short 2 months I've been here, I look forward to it more than everything every week. We have just incredible fraternity. We share our struggles, our triumphs. We study our religion, the theology, and we just have, it's only an hour every week. It's fairly early, so most people are coming in before they go to work. But just having that, and to have that connection, especially in a world where people are so distant. They're so close because of technology, but they're so distant. We aren't sitting down face to face with people as much in these types of situations and really sharing what's going on in our lives. What are we struggling with? What do we need help with? And how can I help you? How can I help you through this period? And having that community, praying together. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. So I've been dragging all my old friends here. I'm this annoying guy who's now turned into this person who tries to drag everybody to everything, that I can. But I have a very recent friend, who's now joining the RCIA program, and the RCIA program is the Rite of Christian Initiation for Adults. So if you want to become Catholic, that's kind of where you start. And every parish has an RCIA program. So this is the sort of how to go to church process. This is what I had to learn. And it's really nice. Most of them start in September, and my friend's going to be joining it there. He has just since sort of through our conversations really fallen in love with because I've just involved them in the community. I've just opened them up to the deep, rich intellectual tradition of Christian history in the Catholic Church, and he's really excited, and he's really just kind of experiencing this as somebody who's before me. I don't think he's ever set foot in a Catholic church or ever even considered it. So it's really cool for me to see and to kind of walk beside him, and I'll be his sponsor. But the RCIA is a really good process. So I went through it, my wife went through it, and you're working with a group of other people who are converting, with normally people who have been through the process themselves. You'll have people there guiding, teaching. You're really learning the history, the teachings, the faith, the theology, all of it, leading up to, if you're getting baptized, your baptism, your confirmation. So it starts in September. We'll go till about Easter. They usually meet once a week, and it's incredible not only for community but also just for learning what the history and the teachings of the Catholic Christian faith are. So I can't speak for every church, obviously, because I'm not a part of every church, but that's how it goes with the Catholic Church. And the thing I'll say is, if you are curious, the great thing about RCIA is you don't have to make a commitment. You don't have to make a firm commitment. You don't have to say, "Yep, I'm becoming Catholic. I'm ready to start going to church. I'm ready." You can just go. You can just go, and they're totally cool and open about this. I've talked to so many people who did that, and they went just because they were curious, and like, hey, maybe I'm not ready to do this, but I at least want to see what it's about. And they will welcome you with open arms. Everybody who's done this, none of them have ever dropped out. Those people who go in, they find this RCIA group, they have all seen it through. All the people I know. I'm sure there's been some people who've dropped out. But don't let the whole commitment thing, if you're interested, don't let that bother you. Look up your local parish, inquire, send an email, say, hey, I see you have an RCIA program. I'm just curious, what would that look like? When does that start? And you can say, maybe I'm not fully ready. Or maybe you might even be somebody who was baptized Christian or Catholic, and if that's the case, still same thing. You can be like, I've been away for a while. I'm kind of seeking. I'm interested. So what does that look like? So that's the whole how, which nobody ever explained that to me. So if you're interested there, that's and of course you can go to Mass, and you get involved in all the communities aside. But the Catholic Church, of course, is a little bit different than a lot of other communities, which goes without saying. But that's pretty much it. It is Sunday, of course, and that is a day that most people go to church. It's a day we typically go to church. So I figured, well, I haven't actually talked about this yet, but I've gotten a lot of emails from people who are curious about this, who are interested. So I figured, well, it's one thing to read books, about these subjects. It's one thing to read podcasts about these subjects. That's the reason side. Okay, is it true? Well, I think it is. But then what are you going to do about it? How is your life going to actually change? And I had to move through that myself. And the answer is, once you live reasonably, you also have to live responsibly. We do that in all other areas of our life. Hopefully, actually sometimes we don't. Sometimes we know what's reasonable, but we don't live responsibly. But when it comes to this, when it comes to the biggest questions of life, we want to be sure we're living reasonably and responsibly. You should go to church because it's true, because it's beautiful, and because it's good for you. And you'll find those lifelong, friendships, that lifelong community where you'll build each other in virtue. You'll suffer together. You'll be through those tough times together. There's no doubt about it. But having that community is so indispensable. And having experienced this, And I look back on these studies, and having gone from the person who was not spiritual and religious to the person who very much is, I look at this back and I say, oh, well, of course. Well, duh. of course it improves all those things. It certainly has for me. It doesn't mean that you won't have challenges in life. Of course you will. It doesn't mean that you still won't have hard times, down times. But you'll have that system of support. You'll have that hope, that optimism, that gratitude. And that carries you so far in life. So that's about it. That's all I wanted to say for this episode. I hope you got something out of it. If you're curious, if you have any other questions, need any other help figuring some of this stuff out, because I know I did, email me, please. Email me at patflynn@chroniclesofstrength.com. I would love to hear from you. I'm always happy to help discuss, offer whatever piece of guidance or advice that I can, even just to connect and say hello. So I am open. I'm available to you. patflynn@chroniclesofstrength.com. God bless. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll talk.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.